Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Zaleski Sports Show. Jason Zaleski here. Steve Maves be in the show here in just a minute as we will bring you up to date with high school, college. Steve, we'll talk about the Badgers, too. Forgot about that. High school sports, Wisconsin Badger football. Badgers on the outside looking in for now, but they've got tournament Final Four hopes in football. Get in the what now is the tournament. Everything else is just bowls. We'll talk about the Badgers, high school sports, preview the Packers, Monday Night Football coming up a little bit later tonight. If there's time on the show, we'll tell you about a movie as well today. But we will start the show. It is playoffs. Jim Mora, right? Playoffs. And it is just a wonderful time of the year when playoffs come around. There's nothing better, Steve, and we'll bring Steve in here right away. There's nothing better than looking at brackets, right? Yeah. I mean, I know guys like me and you. I mean, I'll speak for me, and I'll let you tell the story of your own. But I just like staring at the brackets.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And when the release date for those brackets come out, you hit refresh. I do that all the time. Fall sports, especially basketball, especially in high school, and then obviously the NCAA brackets. But it's a whole new atmosphere when it comes playoff time, so it's quite something.
We'll start with volleyball and teams around the state. Now, these are projections, and projections mixed in with facts. But we're able to get a couple facts and then deduce the rest, and we think we can give you this with 95% accuracy. There may be maybe one time I'll be wrong here in what I'm going to tell you in the next few minutes. Official volleyball brackets come out on Wednesday. The big schools still run the joint, and they say, WIA, you can't let these out till Wednesday. But we're going to give them to you right now, at least the ones we know and the ones that we think we know. The ones we know. Yeah. I think we know them all. And we start in the area. Central Wisconsin teams, projected number ones from Central Wisconsin. Stratford Tigers in Division III will once again nab a number one seed in the 2019 WIAA volleyball playoffs. Brooke Kafka and her team will have a number one seed and an inside track to the Resch Center in Green Bay for the third straight time to go to the state tournament. It doesn't mean they'll get there, but you get that number one seed, you got the inside track, and for Stratford it would be the third consecutive time should they be able to utilize this number one seed and get back to the Resch Center in Green Bay. And Columbus Catholic in Division IV is the number one seed in their section, inside track to the Resch Center in Green Bay. For the Columbus Catholic Dons, the elusive trip to the Resch Center over the past number of years. We'll get into that here as well. But Stratford, like I said, will begin their quest for their third consecutive Resch Center appearance. They're the number one seed in the St. Mary's section. They get a bye. 15 teams in that section, an odd number of teams in that particular section. And they will play the winner of Colby Spencer. And that game will take place in Stratford on October 24th. We project Auburndale to be the number 4 seed. Merriwood South foe to Stratford, number 4 seed in that section. Also, number 2 seed, Fall Creek will be looming, and that would be a 1-2, and that would be a trip to state on the line there. Steve, we'll bring you in. You've seen the Stratford Tigers a couple times, deserving of the 1 seed.
Oh, absolutely. And I was in Amherst on Thursday night with Stratford as they took on Amherst and had some struggles serving, but all in all, they are very, obviously, as you mentioned, a very well-deserving team that should make a nice run. Fall Creek, nothing to bat your eye at, 33-3 this year, and as you said, probably the number 2 seed, so that should set up for a fantastic sectional final at the end of the year.
If I remember right, I may have to go back and look here, but I believe that was the matchup last year as well in sectional finals, Stratford-Fall Creek over in Neelsville. In Division IV, I mentioned Columbus Catholic is the number 1 seed. That is verified information. And they will host Port Edwards, number 16 seed, on Tuesday, October 22nd. So Columbus Catholic gets going right away on Tuesday against Stratford with the bye. Won't play till next week, Thursday, but Columbus plays just 8 sleeps from now, and they are in the playoffs. And the Dons have been Well, the Newman Catholic Cardinals have just been in the way and have been better. That's just the way that it is. In 2016, it was a fifth-game tiebreak that Newman took. In 2017, it was a sweep. Sorry, in 2017, that was a sectional semifinal. And then again, back in Newman. So at Newman in 16, at Newman in 18, and both were five-game classics. The Cardinals won all three of those the last 3 years. And guess what? Newman, the number 2 seed again this year. And so that would be a winner-go-to-state sectional final. I know, Steve, you've maybe seen Newman and Columbus Catholic from afar this year, maybe up close a couple times, but a 1-2 potential there in the D4 section.
Yeah, and I mean, Newman has fallen a little bit this year, 15 and 17 on the year. Mm-hmm. But once you get into the playoffs, especially with a veteran group like that and a veteran coach like they have, it's all in all a very good overall team. I mean, the game that I saw them against Stratford, they struggled. Obviously, everybody struggles against Stratford, but Newman should give anybody that they play a run for their money. Very good veteran group that should make a little bit of a run. As you mentioned, once you get into playoffs, anything can happen, especially against a team that you've faced each of the last 3 or 4 years.
Coach Eagle, Columbus Don head coach, Coach Lang, Newman Catholic Cardinal head coach, two of the best coaches, maybe the two best coaches in Division IV volleyball. And they would each like nothing better than to test their skills against each other again this year, make it 4 in a row. And, man, that would be a match to watch. I've been at all of them so far, and they are something. And those two schools get after it. There's mutual respect there. I don't know that there's we'll just leave it at that. There's mutual respect there between certainly the fan bases now. I know Coach Eagle and Coach Lang admire each other, and that's something to behold as well. Moving on to soccer, and soccer playoffs are established. Those brackets are official. We'll take you through local teams here in Division I. DC Everest is the 5 seed. They play at number 4, Stevens Point. 7 p.m. All these games on Tuesday, October 22nd. Number 3 is Wausau West, and they will host Superior, the 6th seed, at 4 p.m. No lights up there at West, and there'll be a theme here. And I know Steve and I have talked about lights. We'll get to his favorite soccer field here in just a moment. And number 7, Wisconsin Rapids, plays at number 2, Appleton North. That's at 7 p.m. And also on October 22nd, Marshfield gets to host a playoff game. They host number 5, Green Bay Southwest. A lot of folks thought Marshfield would do better than the 4 seed. The 4 seed, depending on upsets, likely just gets the one home game. And Steve will bring you back in. You got to see Marshfield last week at Hiding Stadium, and they'll go right back there on Tuesday against Green Bay Southwest.
Yeah, and they struggled out of the get-go against DC Everest. They were down 2-0 after 12 minutes. But as I talked to Coach McCann about after the game, soccer's a very, very long game. I mean, if you're down 2-0 after 12 minutes, you still have 80 minutes to play. And so then they were able to come back. Kyle Tremelling, the senior leader on that team in soccer, a couple of goals, and they looked pretty impressive when I saw them. But obviously don't know a lot about the other schools in the other parts of the state. But Marshfield should give any team that, like I mentioned in volleyball, any team in playoffs, you can give a run for their money, and Marshfield should fare pretty well in their side of the bracket.
Is that a 4-2 final?
Yep.
Over in Marshfield. So Ian Haugen with the go-ahead goal, and then Tremelling added one for number 4 there. So Marshfield, number 4 seed, hosting number 5 Green Bay Southwest, and that is a 7 p.m. start. Wausau East plays at number 3 Green Bay East. So number 6 East at number 3 Green Bay East, 7 p.m. Those are all Division I pairings there. In Division IV, it is Columbus Catholic. They are the 2 seed, perennial playoff top teams, really, as it goes there. So Columbus Catholic, the number 2 seed. They are in Section 1. They will host number 7, Cooley Christian Providence Academy, and that is on Thursday, October 24th, 4 p.m. at the unlit Greasy Park. And I know, Steve, you've had a couple chances to see the Dons this year, and a couple games that approach nighttime over at Greasy Park. They'll start this one an hour earlier next week, Thursday at 4 p.m.
Which they should all year long. I mean, just to get them in. And if you've ever been to Greasy Park, obviously you have, make sure you take about a gallon of bug spray if you're going out there to watch some soccer. I know a couple of local teams, Bullard, Gresham, and Nakusa, the winner of that one, will play most likely Columbus Catholic on that Saturday afternoon or Saturday night. And so if anybody around there is listening, make sure you take a lot of bug spray. But, they should obviously start those games a little earlier. But obviously once the fall comes around, then days get shorter and all in all. But Columbus Catholic, a very good team. They had a little bit of a run-in with Pacelli last week. They only won 1-0 on a penalty kick by Kellen Delaney. But they get their heads right again. I believe they play Tri-County this week, who is struggling mightily this year. Be able to have a confidence win against Tri-County to end the year should give them plenty of confidence going into the postseason.
You mentioned the bug spray. The other alternative there is hope that it's 20 degrees, and then you're bundled up because the mosquito, from what I understand, doesn't fly at 20 degrees. It's a little wet over at Greasy Park, but it's a fun place to watch soccer. You get to be right on the field as a spectator, so go down there and cheer on your team. You mentioned Tri-County. Still, to me, one of the best high school nicknames in all the state of Wisconsin, the Penguins. For my money, though, the Galloping Ghost, still number one. You don't get any better than a Galloping Ghost. Moving on to football, we've got finals from around the area from this past week. Thursday was a good matchup. It was number one Regis and Cloverbelt foe Spencer Columbus, and Regis ran away with that one. Piled up a big score, and they, of course, will remain the number one team in Division 6. Friday football scores from around the area. Gilman over Athens, 43-21. Athens now dropped a couple in a row. We'll have highlights of Athens and Abbotsford coming up here on Friday night. Wittenberg, Burnham Wood falls to Bonduel, 21-19. Stratford, Edgar, we're going to pause there because... listen, Stratford Edgar, that says it all right there. I don't even have to tell you the score to tell you it was just another dramatic. You can't script something like this. If you were to play out, say Steve and I are sitting there and we're going to say, you know what, how do we make the best for TV episode here? This is exactly how the game would go. There were tackles for loss by both teams, sacks by both defenses, a blocked punt in the game, a first and goal that got stuffed, a second and goal that got stuffed. How about this, Steve? A third and goal that got stuffed, and then two chances for Edgar at the end of the game, a pass to the end zone that fell incomplete, and then a sack by one of the top premier football players in the area, Ben Barton, to end the game. Stratford wins 6-0.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, just a typical Stratford Edgar game the last 2 years. But it was 26-20 last year, 10-0 or something the year before. Every game that they're going to play is always going to be close. You talked to Coach Sins earlier this last week. He's always got his team ready. No matter how many kids they have, no matter how many kids they play, Stratford is always going to be ready, obviously. But it is just a hard-nosed football game when those two teams meet every single year. And that will be interesting to see if they play in week 1 or 2 from here on out, because they go to separate conferences. So hopefully that rivalry continues in the non-conference, but we'll see what they decide when they start making the schedules.
I have no doubt about it that that series will continue. Steel sharpens steel, and it doesn't matter the size of those two schools, the size of those kids. Obviously, Stratford put on a taller, bigger team than Edgar did. And say 6-0, and it just did not matter. Edgar was there every step of the way. you say 6-0, and it was every bit of a 6-0 masterpiece put on by the Tigers and the Wildcats. I mentioned the Bo Gross scores the only score in the game. Bo was sick all week. I went down on the field after the game to talk to Bo, and he was still sick. That was a rough rough-looking kid on Friday night, yet he had the guts to get out there and score that touchdown. He may have scored on second and third down. I think he did. It didn't matter. He scored on fourth down, and just wow. That game, just wow, is what that was. Highlights available of that game and many others on the Zaleski Sports Facebook network. Go check it out right now. More than 20,000 people have watched highlights of this of our games this past weekend. So go check those out. If you're not one of those 20,000, you're missing out. There's no doubt about that. Greenwood over Assumption, Steve. It was a game you had the pleasure of calling. Greenwood still needs one more win, though, to make the playoffs as they play at Thorpe on Friday. I know you talked to Greenwood Indian quarterback Cooper Bredlow about that, the thoughts for the Indians and making the playoffs next week.
Yeah, and he pretty much said if they're not as amped up as they were against Assumption senior night on Friday at Greenwood, if they're not as amped up going into Thorpe, that he's going to be super surprised. And if that team that showed up on Friday against Assumption shows up at Thorpe on Friday, they should be pretty well off because they played absolutely phenomenal offensively, defensively. Cooper Bredlow, as you mentioned, 30-yard touchdown, 70-yard touchdown, and they were able to pass the ball. I mean, they don't throw a whole lot. A lot of teams of that size don't throw the ball. But going into it, just looking over my game notes, Assumption gives up a lot of big plays, and Greenwood took full advantage of that. Had a couple of onside kicks. One of them was recovered to start the second half. But more power to Greenwood. They have, like you mentioned, one more game. They win to get in, and that's what they have to do against Thorpe on Friday night.
Be a very memorable season for Greenwood should they do that as they move to 8-man football next year, so their last year in what we'll just call traditional football to make the playoffs. That would be quite an accomplishment. And then who knows? Once you get in the playoffs, who knows?
Which is pretty phenomenal because they only have 3 or 4 seniors on that team. And Cooper Bredlow, one of the juniors coming back next year, they have a lot of talent going into 8-man football next year.
Yeah, you think of the teams in 8-man, they're probably a little bit worried right now, thinking of, hey, what happened here? This team is coming out of our league, and they just made the playoffs, and the other one. All right, Shiocton over Iola Scandinavia, 16-13. The Thunderbirds' struggles continue in 2019. We mentioned Greenwood at Thorpe. Loyal beat Thorpe. It was a comeback, though. Thorpe was up at halftime 12-6 over the Hounds, and the Hounds now win their 4th consecutive game after dropping their first 3, 22-18 over Thorpe. Rocco, running back for the Thorpe Cardinals, will be everything. It'll be all Indians, all hands on deck to stop Mr. Rocco to make the playoffs the next week at Thorpe. Manawa over Wyoega Fremont 47-6. Marathon over Tomahawk 47-14. Marshfield clinches their spot in the playoffs on a comeback win. It was a last second. Under a minute to play, pass from Joey Gadel to Simon Slade, 20-19, as they get just by the Everest Evergreens. So Marshfield now in the playoffs in 2019. They finish up at home Friday against Sparta. You can listen to that game on 1450 AM WDLB. Medford over Mosinee. Medford, third-ranked team in Division III. They rough up Mosinee 35-14. Neilsville Granton over Osseo Fairchild. Now, here's something, we're going to pause here just a little bit. 55-36, and Osseo Fairchild's a good football team. Turns out so is Neilsville Granton. 2 years ago, they hadn't won, at that point, at the end of that season, they hadn't won a conference game in a number of years. They won 2 last year. Now they are on the precipice of making the playoffs. Now, hold on, though. Mentioned at the top of the scoring report, number 1, Regis, and it'll be Neilsville Granton at Regis on Thursday night. Zaleski Sports and WCCN will team up to bring that game to you live. You can watch it at zaleskisports.com. If they can pull that upset, well, not only do they clinch the playoffs, so they're every bit a playoff team. Even if they don't, though, Steve, they could still get a bid to make the playoffs, and we'll see. It all just depends who's left and how they match up against the other teams. But an interesting one there. Another interesting one, Auburndale over North Fond du Lac, 40-0. Auburndale, we believe, will host a playoff game in 2 Fridays. They still technically need a win to clinch. They're eligible. They need a win to clinch. And they're at Rib Lake Prentice on Friday. We'll have that one live at ZaleskiSports.com. Abbotsford over Owen Withy, 53-25. Go through the rest of the area scores here. Merrill over Rhinelander, 27-21. Spash picks up their first win of the year. They beat Wausau West 33-14. Wisconsin Rapids falls at home to La Crosse Logan. The Lincoln Red Raiders now play at Wausau West Friday. That game will be live on 1320 AM WFHR, and you can watch it live at ZaleskiSports.com. Steve, Lincoln had some struggles this year. They've played a tough schedule. It seems like you should be able to get a win over at West. Rapids needs the win to make the playoffs. If they do, they're in. If they don't, they're out.
Yeah, absolutely. And a very winnable game at Tom Field on Friday night against Wausau West. As you mentioned, Spash beat West, and Spash has struggled tremendously this year, surprisingly, how fast some of these programs have sunk, as we say. But it should be a big game. Coach Biolo should have his boys ready. Obviously, if they win, you win and you're in. And so you might not draw a very good matchup in your first week, but that doesn't matter. You're in the playoffs. You play week 10 of high school football. It's always a good feeling to get into the playoffs, no matter where you have to travel, no matter who you have to play. Yeah,
Wisconsin Rapids will be slotted in Division One. They will draw a tough opponent should they win, but again, you get in the playoffs, you just never know what happens. Interestingly enough, Marshfield, also in the Valley West, will be slotted in Division 2. So they take their tough schedule, and then they against primarily D1 teams, and they'll participate in Division 2 playoffs. And as a conference champion now, I failed to mention that, as a conference champion, you go into that seed meeting down in Division 2. I say down, but that's just where they are. Yeah. You go to that seed meeting in Division 2, and you can tell all those D2 teams, hey, I won my conference. I won a D1 conference. Yeah. I'm at least a 2 seed, and argue against me on the 1, and then we'll get into seed meeting talk on next week's show. One last score from the area: Pittsville 66, Menominee Indian nothing. Pittsville in the playoffs this year as well. So I think we'll wrap up high school scores there. Pretty good stuff though, and we'll have all playoff seeding for football coming up on Saturday. So it's playoffs all over the place this week. We mentioned volleyball seeds as we know them, and as we think we know them. Soccer seeds are official, and then high school football playoff seeds will be set as of Saturday afternoon. Moving to the NFL, we've got Monday Night Football tonight, and Steve Maves is here to tell us why the Green Bay Packers will beat the Detroit Lions tonight on Monday Night Football.
Well, it's going to be a tough ride for the Packers tonight. Devontae Adams out tonight for the Packers. The Lions coming off of a long week. I mean, they didn't play last week, and now they have a whole week this week. So they've have a long time to get ready for the Packers. They've given the Packers a run for their money the last couple of years. Last year in a meaningless game we were talking before we went on air at Lambeau, 31-0. Aaron Rodgers out in the first quarter of that game, but the Packers just seem to be on a different level right now. Aaron talked about it last week after their win against the Cowboys. They're having fun. I mean, Aaron obviously has fun when he plays, but he hasn't shown it the way he has this year with head coach Matt LaFleur. They get into a little tussle sometimes on the sidelines with play call, but you'll get that in your first 5 games with a new head coach and a veteran quarterback. But they just have to run the ball. Aaron Jones, phenomenal. Jamal Williams cleared concussion protocol this last week, so we'll see how much time he gets. But again, Devontae Adams out this week with that turf toe, and we'll see how long it will be, because he said there's no timetable for him right now. So get them rested up. They have Oakland next week. Again, a team coming off of a bye week next week in the Raiders. We'll talk about that, obviously, next Monday. But it's going to be one heck of a game. Monday night, always a good crowd on hand at Lambeau for a night game. The weather should hold up. I mean, 42 degrees, slight wind, no precipitation. Should be a perfect night for football in October for the Packers.
Very comfortable football weather there, as Those guys get heated up in a hurry. So a very comfortable football weather for those elite professional athletes. You mentioned Rogers LaFleur. Their interactions on the sideline never even bothered me. I was surprised when I saw some of the reports coming out, or some maybe of our peers in this industry talking about, oh, look what's going. No, I mean, that is a healthy relationship from what I see, because those are two guys that want the best for their team, want the best for their situation, and they're talking about it. They're talking about it on the sidelines, and there isn't during the course of a football game or any sporting event, there's not just time to sit down and have a long, drawn-out conversation. I mean, you got to get right to the point. Mm-hmm. Your coach gets right to the point. Everybody's feelings get out right away. Here's what I saw. Here's what happened. Why in the world did you call that play? Don't call that play again. Yeah. Call this play again. There's just not time for a 10-minute conversation about it. And like you said, I mean, they're smiling, they are having fun, and they're winning.
Yep.
And that's what you have to do. We'll move over to college football. Haven't spent a whole lot of time on the show. And again, you're listening to the Zaleski Sports Show here again this morning, every Monday on the radio here, Zaleski Sports Show. And you can also watch in replay at zaleskisports.com. Haven't talked a lot about college football this year, but we're going to talk about it now because we're coming down to the nitty-gritty. And the number 8 ranked Wisconsin Badgers will get to updated rankings as they came into the game Saturday, took care of Michigan State 38-0. And Michigan State's had some struggles, but that is an absolute pounding being put on by the Badgers.
And again, Michigan State was able to contend or slow down Jonathan Taylor quite a bit. I mean, he only had, 90 yards?
80 yards, 26 on 80, yep.
Yeah, 80 yards. But Jack Cohen played absolutely phenomenal in the quarterback position for the Badgers. Scarily and unfortunately, Jim Leonard, the defensive coordinator for the Badgers, might not be around for very long with how phenomenal his defense is playing. Yeah. Would not be surprised if he got some calls this offseason for head coaching jobs. But defensively, they've scored 4 touchdowns, the Badgers have.
That's right.
And they've only given up 4 touchdowns. And so against Michigan teams, absolutely domination. Have only given up those 14 points. They beat Central Michigan 61-0, beat the Wolverines 35-14, and then they took care of Michigan State, as you mentioned, 38-0. Don't want to say a cakewalk next week at Illinois because Illinois gave Michigan a little bit of a game on Saturday, but everything is tuned up for that week, the game in a couple weeks on October 26th at Ohio State. That will be a game, if the Badgers even keep it close, would be just fantastic for the Badgers to have their say in going forward.
The Badgers are halfway through the schedule. They've played 6. They've got 6 left at Illinois. Steve mentioned October 26th at Ohio State, home to number 23 Iowa, at Nebraska, Purdue, and then rounding out at home against currently number 20, Minnesota, Saturday, November 30th. That game against Ohio State. At Ohio State, the number 4 ranked Buckeyes. Badgers win that. They are in the national championship conversation. If they don't, they're out. And that's really what this season is going to come down to. Wisconsin moves up 2 spots in the rankings from 8 to 6. Georgia gets stunned by South Carolina in overtime. So they drop from number 3 down to number 10, make room for the Badgers' upward movement. Penn State right behind Wisconsin at number 7. The top 5, Alabama, LSU, Clemson, Ohio State, and Oklahoma. The top 4 go into the national championship playoff series. And again, Wisconsin beats Ohio State in a couple weeks. They are in that series. If not, they're not.
Yep.
It's really as simple as it gets. All right, we're going to close things out here with some movie talk. We haven't done a lot of movies here, and mainly I don't watch a lot of movies, but I know Steve, movie fan, about the same level I am. We both enjoyed the Queen movie. I think that actually came out last year. I finally got around to watching it, maybe in the spring sometime. A fantastic movie. There's other ones. I've got a favorite list, and maybe during the off season, maybe during the Major League Baseball All-Star break, we can do a movie review, but. The missus and I had a chance to take in a movie on Saturday. Joaquin Phoenix is some kind of actor. He really is. He was in in a Johnny Cash movie, I don't know, a number of years ago, which I thought was done really well. And he's in a movie now, and I think it just came out.
Yep.
I don't know. There were two showings at the particular theater we were at. They had at the same time, 8 and 8:30. So I mean, they're double booking his movie because it's just so packed. And that 8 o'clock movie was jam packed. So we decided to hold off a half an hour and get something to eat at the always fairly priced movie theater concession stand, and then went into the movie a little bit later and had a great one. But Joaquin Phoenix in a movie called Joker. And if you're any kind of a Batman fan or ever heard of Batman, and I think most of you have, it's a really interesting movie. But even if you haven't, or I'm not a comic book fan, and I'm not, that movie is just some kind of special. He is a really, really good actor. People complain all the time about how much professionals get paid for things, athletes, actors. I don't care what he got paid. He probably got underpaid for that movie. He lost 53 pounds for the role. Wow. I mean, really. I mean, you think about, and this is not a big guy. Yeah. He's a fairly average to slender guy to begin with, and now he lost 53 pounds. And a couple scenes in the movies, I mean, you can tell he is just skin and bones in this movie. But it was needed for the role he played. He played Joker. So, Steve, there's a movie recommendation for the folks out there. Joker is the movie. Yeah,
and I've heard a lot of off and on things about it, but you can't really go wrong with a movie like that. As you mentioned, very good movie. Heath Ledger did very well in his role. Unfortunately, he passed, but I'm looking forward to it. Looking forward to going and maybe wait to get it on DVD or something. But it's over $350 million in the first week and a half, 2 weeks. Yeah. So very good revenue maker for Joker.
Yeah, we head into the movie season here too. As the weather turns cold, the movies start to heat up a little bit. But a really good movie. If you're thinking of Batman from years past, or any of those movies with the Joker or the Riddler, this is not a comic book movie. This is I don't even know how to explain it. You just got to go see it. I don't want to do any spoilers, but this is it's not a bam and whammo and fun music happening. And that's not one of those. This is a pretty good movie. Turns out after the movie, we'll wrap things up here on the Zaleski Sports Show. Found out I have a unique talent. I can laugh like Joker, and I didn't know that. And I kind of let one out. So I told Rachel I'll let one out here. So here we go. That's the Joker. That's the best I can do. And we're going to joke ourselves right out of the show today. For Steve Maves, Jason Zaleski, this has been the Zaleski Sports Show. We will talk to you again next week. Go Sports.